And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to our 83rd episode of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for Indiana University sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Tuesday evening, April 9th, 2019, where I am your host, Noah Freeman. You can catch our live broadcast Tuesday evenings at 8:30 p.m. on our YouTube page or our website. If you missed that live broadcast, you can subscribe to our show for free on whatever platforms you listen to podcasts. You can listen on your own time. Check out our Twitter and Facebook at The Hoosier Sound and at Indiana HQ. Subscribe and turn that bell on. All the information is in our website, indianahq.com. All right, Hoosier Nation, it is time for some sports talk. As you hear the sirens go by in Matt's room, something's going on in Bloomington. But on the docket for tonight, what is our offseason wish list for next year? Matt is here with me to go over what we think are the most important items for Archie Miller and this team to get over this offseason. We might also talk a little bit about other sports wish lists, as well as a very big sighting that happened over the weekend. But first, Matt, thanks for being here. How are you doing on this fine evening, and what did you think of that game last night?
Well, I thought it was a great game. I tweeted something about this earlier, but it had IU basketball written all over it. You know, of course, Coach Beard is a former assistant head coach for Bob Knight at Texas Tech, so Bob Knight connection. That's not the first time and only time we're going to talk about Bob Knight on this podcast. Secondly, Kyle Guy, of course, grew up an IU fan, probably should have been an IU player, wins Final Four most outstanding player. You know, things, what could have been, makes you think about what could have been with Kyle Guy. Again, Virginia runs the pack line defense, so for everybody that says the pack line doesn't work, here you go. Of course, we use a slightly abridged version of the pack line compared to what Virginia does, but this still shows that a team that runs pack line defense can win the national championship game. So I thought it was great for IU basketball. I thought it was great for college basketball as a whole as well. I thought it was a great game, very close. You know, at first I thought Virginia was going to run away with it. Then Texas Tech came back, made it one heck of a game. I thought Texas Tech deserved to be in it at the end of the game. You know, Virginia got some foul calls that went their way and got some free throws, but hey, it's basketball, and I think Virginia obviously deserved to win the game. I selfishly wanted the game to end on a buzzer beater at some end, and the regular time, it did. You know, the 17 seconds left, Virginia hitting the corner three, DeAndre Hunter hitting it to tie up the game. So I kind of got what I wanted, but I selfishly wanted more. But I mean, hey, it was a great game. I enjoyed watching it. I assume you did too, since you're from Virginia, but I'll let you talk about it more.
Yeah, growing up 2 hours from Charlottesville, 2 hours from UVA's campus. I also have a lot of friends that went to UVA. Yeah. Either went to UVA, still at UVA. I got one of my best friends is getting his master's right now, and everyone was at the football stadium. They had it on the big screen. He sent me videos and everything at the end of when regulation was the time was going down to 0, how loud it got. Everyone rushed the field. Then just downtown and everything was as crazy as you'd expect. Great for, first of all, either team winning obviously would have been their first national championship, but great for even if it was Texas Tech, great for UVA to get that first one. Get it out of the way, basically, since they've been so consistently good the past 3, 4, 5 years, being one of the most consistent ACC teams. And when you say ACC team, going up against Duke, UNC, all those big powerhouse teams, and being consistent, finally getting that one, especially after last year being that #1 overall seed, losing to the worst team in the entire tournament, coming back, getting it. Kyle Guy, Indiana guy. Basically, one of the reasons that Virginia was even in the national championship game, let alone wins the entire thing. So Good for UVA. Great game overall, just incredible game. Exceeded expectations for even people that thought it was going to be a great game. Everyone that thought the offenses were going to be bad, first of all, the statistics didn't prove that at all, but great game. I don't think we need to go into it too long just because people came here for some IU sports talk, but
I mean, but like I said, it does have something to do with IU. And,
yep, I was about to say that because of the Chris Beard connection, Kyle Guy, and just defense. Archie's cornerstone, what his basketball teams are, is defense, and literally not just one but two teams were competing last night in the national championship game that focused on defense more than offense. Not that they didn't focus on offense, obviously, but they focused on defense. Defense literally won a championship last night. And it also goes to show if you have defense and a three-point shooter or a couple three-point shooters, you can win the entire thing. But, okay, so off-season wish list. The guys, Matt and I, are going to give you our top 3 items on the wish list before maybe adding a couple extras at the end. So let's go backwards. So maybe our 3rd item on our wish list, and then we'll go to what we think we need the most. And now there are a few things that obviously, if the wish list were to come true, if we were had a genie in a bottle, we got 3 wishes and we got all of them granted. Of course, there's multiple things, but these were some of the things that we just talked about, and we're going to explain why, because our first one is something maybe not everyone would have talked about. So our 3rd wish list item is a favorable matchup in the Big Ten ACC Challenge, and maybe, possibly, potentially the Gavitt games. Now, when I said potentially the Gavitt games, the weird contract that the Big Ten has with just how many games you can play in the Gavitt games, how many games you're supposed to play in a certain amount of years and stuff, it's very weird. Indiana has played in a lot of Gavitt games, so this could be a year that maybe the Gavitt games is not on Indiana's schedule, but of course we'll find out. I have no idea when. But, of course, how it seems like every season now we play Duke or UNC in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. And I think basically our thought process was to have a good matchup, but maybe not some the highest of blue bloods to where it's almost an automatic loss, at least to where this team is. Of course, and we've even won before, beating UNC, and we played Duke pretty close a few years ago, not this year, but a few years ago. But I think just the way how, of course, this season ended with the amount of losses we had, it'd be nice to get just another win on the board. Is that kind of what your thoughts were when we talked about this?
Absolutely. As much as I love getting our doors blown off by Duke at Duke, I would really like a home game next year, more than even just like a favorable matchup. A home game would be nice. Like if we end up playing UVA at home, wouldn't that be fantastic? That'd be great. It'd be great for the atmosphere. It'd be a great game, and you'd be able to see kind of where you want IU basketball to be in the long term. Would I want to play Duke at home or North Carolina next year at home? Probably not, because we've played them, 4 out of the last 4 years, right? Like we played Duke 3 of the last 4 years and played North Carolina the other year. But somebody else from the ACC would be nice. And as far as the Gavitt games go, when's the last time we had a Gavitt games home game? Or the Gavitt game home game was Marquette this year was home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That was
Okay.
Yeah, then we had Seton Hall away. Yeah, I mean, just like definitely we just want like games that we can win, but also teams that are decent wins. Like I want quad 1 wins, but like lower quad 1 wins from those 2 matchups. I don't want to play the Dukes of the world or the UNCs or the Villanovas.
So not the best or second best teams that are still top 25 caliber, just outside top 25.
Right, absolutely. Like those teams would be fine. Like a Xavier, that'd be a great game, and they're from Ohio, so it's not like that far of a trip. I would love something like that.
And again, we obviously don't even know how Indiana's roster is going to shape up, let alone some of the other rosters, because even a team like Duke, Trey Jones said he's coming back for his sophomore season. So, of course, the next few months are going to be key as to how some of these teams are getting laid out, and like if we ended up for some, I feel like they cannot they're not going to schedule Duke at all. But even if they were to schedule a team like Duke, is that actually going to be a game where it's just pencil in an L right away, or is this going to be a game where we might actually have a chance? So it depends. And I wanted to play UVA this year. Maybe that might not have been the best, just seeing how good UVA ended up being, but I wanted to play UVA this year. I think that'd be a great matchup next year, if not the year after that, because then you can see Archie's pack line, developed pack line defense more against obviously UVA's pack line defense, because you don't see the pack line play the pack line very much anymore.
Yep.
And UVA is also losing a couple great players, so they're not going to be, at least when we would play them, they're not going to be a finished product just yet, because they've got a lottery pick or two at least going into the draft next year. But that is our third favorable match, or our third wish list item, favorable matchup. And I think it also kind of just goes into a good non-conference schedule. We not get those 300 level opponents and just more of those 200 level opponents, and just getting wins so that we don't come out of the non-conference schedule losing more than 1 or 2 games, basically. So we'll have to see how that shapes up. But let's go to our second wish list item, and I think this is something that everyone can at least relate to after this season, is just good health. We specifically talked about Race, Jerome, and Duran specifically, but just good health overall.
Yeah, we've definitely gotten the worse off end of the spectrum as it comes to injury luck the last couple of years. It'd be nice to have a year where we don't have any injuries, or if we do have injuries, they're subtle injuries that, people can come back in like a game or two, and not a concussion that keeps people out for like 3 weeks. So,
if not longer in terms of race this year.
Exactly. Right, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be great to have everyone, just so as you saw at the end, when everyone first of all started to get into a groove, and you also had a bench to play during practice, because we forget, all right, you got 6 or 7 guys that can play during the game, and that's all. And obviously when at very least it's what you want, because then you can at least play the game and play it pretty well. But then you can't really get better when you have only 7, maybe 8 guys, 6, 7, 8 guys that can practice, because then they're not getting better in practice since everyone's injured. Going up against the walk-ons and the managers only goes so far, and when everyone else in the entire nation is able to keep continually progressing, it's hard for you to stay there, let alone those injuries. Also, losing someone like Rob Finney, you have to change almost your entire system, since he basically runs the offense, and we didn't have at that point a backup point guard that was playing the kind of style that Archie wanted for point guard. So like Matt said, even injuries are bound to happen. Obviously, you can never predict them. They're bound to happen. But even if there are any injuries, just that there may be a game or two, they get sick and they have the flu and they can't come for one game or something that's not too long.
We had so many of those this year. It was insane. Like, you'd hear like Deron Davis is out with like the stomach flu, or Romeo would just like go in the locker room and puke during a game. We just could not catch a break this year, and we'll talk about not catching a break in the next thing we talk about. But I just getting some luck back on our sides, right? And maybe the curse is broken because Bob Knight came back. Who knows? But.
Yeah, exactly. So, and especially I think I can speak for everyone, all IU basketball fans, just to see Jerome Hunter be able to play, since his injury was pretty serious this year, and not just for our selfish reasons, more for him being able to play, because he obviously wants to play basketball, and having a serious injury like that is sometimes hard to overcome, but hopefully it'll be good to see him next year. And if you listen to the last podcast on The Brink, Eddie Cotton, one of the seniors at Indiana who does a lot of sports things, long way around. Eddie Cotton talked about how in his gut, and he gets to talk to the players a lot of time. He gets some extra access that not even some of the top media guys get. But he said his gut feeling, Jerome gets to play next, or is going to be able to play next year. So that would be great to see him. Also Duran. And Duran specifically, also for just consistent play from him. Because when we saw him at his peak this year, we saw, again, people are kind of downplaying Duran next year. I think if Duran's healthy, he's going to be someone that we underrate in this offseason, or at least a lot of people are underrating.
Yeah. Me picturing Duran and Trace Jackson Davis playing together is a fun thing to think about, to say the least.
And once the roster is a little more finalized next year, we can obviously play with lineups. But if Duran's healthy, I'm pretty sure Trace and Duran are going to be on the floor together, which is going to be that's going to be pretty fun to watch. So, all right, our top wish list item, and of course, if we haven't mentioned it already, I think you can already guess and saying in your heads right now, shooting. Yes. Now, we specifically talked about three-point shooting and free throw shooting, since those were obviously the two biggest ones. And I think if you were to rank those two against each other, I think three-point shooting would be on the very, very, very top of the list, since free throw shooting actually started to come a little bit into its own by the end of the season. It at least wasn't pitiful. By the end, it was starting to be at least bearable. But shooting, what are your thoughts on shooting? Maybe go into specifics, who on the team can start getting to be that consistent shooter, in addition to adding some sort of extra player with our maybe three scholarship spots being open.
Absolutely. So I think as far as getting people better at shooting and more consistent at shooting, I look at the likes of like Rob Finney, who went through some lulls in his shooting this year. Like, obviously, that Butler game, he hits that giant three-point shot, along with the fact that he was like shooting like 30 or 5 or 40% from three at one point this season. So he was pretty reliable at one point, and then during our run in which, he got injured with his concussion and then came back, and we were losing a bunch, he was shooting terrible from three. I think it was like in the 20%. Same thing with he was closer to Romeo. But, he bounced back towards the end of the season, especially when we started playing well. Seeing him be more consistent, especially since he's probably going to play a lot more next year and have a lot more responsibility with the offense next year as a sophomore point guard, shooting is definitely going to be a must for him. Just more consistent. Also improving his free throw shooting, because he shot the three pretty well, but his free throw shooting was also inconsistent. So that shooting as a whole for Rob, just getting in the gym, getting a little bit better. I think a year of experience and then an offseason to really work on it, he'll be pretty good next year. Devontae Green, becoming more consistent, or harnessing those last 5 games he had and harnessing that and bringing that all the time next year, because he was lights out those last 5 games. He was, and during the Ohio State game, I was absolutely 100% had total faith whatever he put up was going to go down, and I want him to be that for next year, because that completely changes the complexion of the team. So Devontae harnessing the end of the season. Going down the list, I'm not sure if Jerome Hunter's shooting is more of being able to see him on the court, because I know he can shoot the ball, but getting another shooter back that we already have in the program, Jerome Hunter, would be nice. Working on Race Thompson's three-pointer would be nice. But I think the big one I haven't talked about yet is Justin Smith. I think Justin Smith needs to take the entire offseason and just be like, you know what? I'm going to be a three-point shooter. And just work on his shot the entire offseason. Because if he could do that and he can get a jump shot, and a consistent jump shot at that. And I'm not talking Justin Smith is our best three-point shooter. I'm talking Justin, shoot 32% from three, 31%. A threat. Yes, somebody that they have to guard out at the three-point line. He becomes a way better player, because then he can do what he does best, his rim running, getting to the basket, cutting, getting lobs. He can get that a lot easier if that person isn't standing right under the rim who's guarding him. And it opens up the offense completely for the rest of his teammates. So as far as people developing a jump shot goes, I'll run down the list again. Rob Finney, getting more consistent. Same thing with Devontae, harnessing the energy, harnessing the shot-making ability that he had in the last 5 games. I think Jerome Hunter coming back, Race Thompson developing a stronger three-point shooter, a stronger three-point shot, and gaining confidence as a shooter. Definitely because I've seen his highlight tapes. I know he can do it. You know, especially if you watch him before games, he's one of our more consistent wing shooters. And then Justin Smith developing his shot and making it consistent, just making himself a threat is definitely, those are the 5 guys that I'd point out. As far as adding a shooter, I'll let you take that if you want to. But yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't have to. Maybe it depends on how the next couple of weeks go. If Indiana actually gets their person or not, or maybe we're still a couple weeks down the road and we still don't have, we haven't filled any scholarship spots or something like that. We can go into maybe more of where these the scholarships are going to go. But I'm going to echo a couple things you said. That first, remember this wish list. So hoping that some of these kids are able to go into the gym and fix things. I want to talk a little bit about Justin Smith, because you said Justin Smith, and I was even caught off guard for a second. I'm like, why Justin Smith? But then when you think about it, where does Justin do, besides defense, his offensive game, where is Justin able to do anything? And that's literally only 2 or 3 feet around the rim. And I think you were just talking more about expanding his 2 or 3 feet around the basket of scoring something, so that he can go out to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then maybe a 3-er every once in a while.
Yeah. 3-point shooting, he doesn't have to shoot 40% from 3. I am talking like a 5% jump of what he already shoots. Then I'm talking like developing a kind of mid-range game, because if he could do both of those, and we saw that when he had his 24-point outburst against Michigan State, we saw that he did that. That was what he was doing. He was actually able to shoot the ball. Like, he hit 3 threes and a half against Michigan State. He can take over a game if he can shoot, because he's so freaking athletic. And you look at teams like Texas Tech, you look at teams like Virginia, they have guys on their roster that, while they're not fantastic 3-point shooters, they're fantastic athletes. And they show that on the defensive end, and they come down on the offensive end and they can hit a shot right when you really need it. And that's what I want out of Justin Smith. I don't want him to jack up 5 3-pointers a game. I want 1 or 2, and to him to be able to make 1 or 2 of them, right? 2 or 3, and hit 1 or 2 of them. Just be a threat, so that people have to guard you more than 2 or 3 feet out from the rim. So there you go. There's the defense.
Yeah. And I also want to talk about Devontae Green that you talked about, and everything you said. That's exactly what I would have said. And just add on to it, if Indiana is able to add shooters onto next season, if Indiana is to find a 3-point shooter, they might honestly have their 3-point shooter already on the team with Devontae Green, if he can play like he did the last 6, 7, 8 games and do it consistently, because he was really knocking down shots left and right. And like you said, you actually had a lot of confidence when he shot the ball that it was really going to go in. And if he can do that the entire time, he's a legit 3-point shooting threat. And he also wasn't just shooting right tippy toes on the line the whole time. He was able to step back a couple feet every once in a while and still knock down those threes. And even if Devontae is able to do that, again, you still need to add more of those people, because you saw at Texas Tech, a bunch of people were able to make 3-pointers when they needed it. It just wasn't one guy. Even you saw last night, now again, recording this on Tuesday, so the championship game was last night. You saw Francis off the bench was able to hit some 3-pointers and keep Texas Tech in the game when almost all of their starters were doing nothing. Then you've got Virginia, where you had obviously Kyle Guy making threes left and right, literally whenever he wanted to pull up a shot. You had Ty Jerome that's able to step back and make a 3. And then, of course, DeAndre Hunter getting all of those threes at the end of the game, specifically last night. They have 3 knockdown shooters that's able to go with their efficient offense and their lockdown defense.
I'm not even asking Justin Smith to be like Jerome Hunter, to be like DeAndre Hunter. I'm asking him to be somebody like Braxton Key is for Virginia, right? Like, Braxton Key comes in, gives you energy on both ends of the court, like where he makes most of the shots, 2 to 3 feet around the rim, but he has a mid-range game that you have to respect. So you have to guard him out to the 3-point line. So that's all I'm asking.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't disagree. I just clarifying your Justin Smith a little more to add it, and then so if If you use Devontae as a key 3-point shooter, and honestly, I think he might be able to be that the entire season. I hope I'm not putting the cart before the horse. But then if you get Devontae as one of the 3-point shooters, you get at least one knockdown 3-point shooter from either transfer or incoming recruit, whether it's Lester Quinones or just someone coming in. If you get at least Devontae and him, I think then the rest of it, like you say, can be by committee, where you've got Rob that can knock down shots, Al that can knock down shots. If you've got a threat of Justin that can knock down, if Jerome's able to come back in, maybe Race is able to step back out, then you're able to do that. But I think in addition to by committee, I think you definitely need one, if not two, at the very least.
You talk so fast there. But yeah, my wish list as far as recruiting goes for the rest of the year, I'd really like Joey Brunk to come in. I think with the holes that we now have, which I didn't think we were going to have on the front court, I would definitely want a backup center, and you can't do much better than a guy who already has 2 years of experience playing at the Big East level, shows he's been has shown that he can be productive. Case in point, when he played it against us for Butler during the Butler IU game, I'd love to see him in an IU uniform. Also, I want to see a shooting wing. I'd like to see somebody who can play off the ball and shoot the ball on the wing. So, dream transfer would be Rajon Tucker out of Arkansas Little Rock, but I don't think we're going to get him. But somebody like him, somebody who's a small forward or power forward that could shoot the ball, and then somebody who's somebody who we wanted Evan Fitzner to be, somebody who can come in and then consistently play defense and consistently contribute on the offensive end, and then somebody like Lester Quinones or Harlan Beverly to come in at the guard spot. Or nobody's been really talking about him from an IU perspective, but Evan, what's his name? Out of Chattanooga. He's transferring. He's from Indianapolis, and his name is slipping my mind. I will actually look him up right now so I can remember his name. But
yeah. But those are our 3 off-season wish lists. I know we wanted to talk about a couple just extra bonus items for the wish list, just to throw in there if this basketball team was listening to this podcast and actually gave us our wish list, our Christmas in April wish list.
It's Kevin Easley. Sorry, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, Kevin Easley, somebody like that. Even though he'd have to sit out a year, but he was a 40% free 3-point shooter. He's from Indianapolis, and he's transferring after his freshman year there. So somebody like him.
Yeah, got it. All right, so these bonus items. So I know, Matt, you have one specifically that I agree with, and I'll even add on to something if you don't use my point. But we threw this out to our Indian HQ back channels, and we got stuff. We got a lot of comments, like we already said, adding on to it like a free throw regiment, and I think Archie's going to hopefully and also adding that to like some shooting specific training things. So I think Archie's going to obviously make that a priority. You can tell he's already made it a priority in the recruits that he started to target, and then also go after pretty hard. So he knows about it. Let's just see if he can do something with it during the off season. In addition, team chemistry building. And I think a lot of that might just come from maybe just off season, just hanging out and being friends. I mean, you don't have to be friends with everyone, but just getting to like each other, because there were some rumors that the locker room wasn't at the best it's been at times. But Archie's also done a great job of keeping a lot of that in-house, as it should be. So, Matt, I know you had a big bonus wish list item that you would like to see happen.
Yeah. Going off the blueprint of what a lot of the really good programs do, I would love to see IU basketball take a trip to Europe. And you might go, what? Why? Why would you take a trip to Europe? Well, because over the summer, as teams getting to know each other, it's a great experience. It's a great experience for the guys to bond together, right? Like, a lot of these guys probably never been outside of the United States, and or if they've been out of the United States, it's probably been like for a basketball tournament in like the Bahamas, or, the Virgin Islands or something like that for an AAU tournament. I'd really like them to get the experience to go over to Europe, to see the world. Of course, that's fantastic. But also being able to play some of the pro teams over there, they are really good basketball teams over in Europe. And they love basketball just as much as us in some places. So it'd be really nice for us to get some game reps in the summer before the season starts. And you saw we had the secret scrimmage with Loyola Chicago this year. Of course, I thought Loyola Chicago was better than they were going to be, and so when I was blown away with what came out of the game, it was like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. But being able to go over to Europe, play against grown men as college students, being able to spend time as a team together and travel around, like that is stuff that is so important for this program. You look at the likes of teams like Michigan does that all the time. I think they do it every year. They go over to Europe. Of course, it's a little bit easier when you have team or players on your team that are from Europe. They had Mo Wagner most recently, who's from Germany. They've had a couple guys from Germany on Michigan. But being able to go over to Europe and play professional teams and get some game reps and get some practice, like game practice in, I think that's, like monumental for IU basketball season next year.
A caveat with that, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm fairly certain you're not allowed to go every year. So I think maybe it just seems like that for Michigan. I think you're only allowed to go once every 3 or 4 years or something.
Really?
If you want to take a trip over to Europe. I think it's something along those lines. I haven't officially looked it up yet, but I totally agree. And you looked at for a more recent example, Duke took a Europe trip this past
They went to Canada this summer, I believe.
No, they went over to Europe.
Duke went over to Europe and Canada, didn't they?
I guess, yeah. Anyway, in 2018, and that's why you also saw Duke came out. They look like almost a complete team to some of us, and it wasn't just the talent that they had starting at the beginning of the 2018-2019 season. It was because they had so many game reps already. So that's why you saw them come out against Indiana and they looked really good and they played with a lot of team chemistry. It's also because instead of playing 2 or 3 games like Indiana had, they had already played almost 10 games, if not more, against actual really good competition. So it basically
that goes a long way for coaches in developing rotations and finding out who plays best together. And, for us, we were warming up into the season. We were still getting people back from injury, right? So I mean, it's kind of unfortunate that that's what happened to us. We ran into a buzzsaw in Duke this year. But, I mean, I would like for us to be that buzzsaw next year.
Yeah, it starts the season in July compared to November. And I'm pretty sure that's why you're not allowed to go every year, just because then you'd basically be starting a preseason very early every year. So I think that's why they give you the opportunity to go every few years, which makes sense because then obviously why would everyone not go all the time so that they can basically start the season over there and then everyone would eventually play each other over in Europe and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I agree, especially team chemistry. You can also find all the problems real quick if someone doesn't get along with someone when they have hours on a plane over there and spending weeks next to each other the entire time. So,
yeah.
All right. Wish lists for the soccer team. What is one wish list that you would have for the soccer team next year?
Some more consistent offensive play. I think defensively and goalkeeping wise, they're pretty set for as far as soccer goes. But the goal scoring drought towards the end of the season, the inability to score goals was kind of a problem. And then that's what ended up biting us in the butt when it came against Maryland. So just some more consistent scoring for the soccer team. And I think we'll be better if we can score.
Yeah,
that's the point of the game. But
I think I'd add some people to step up as some of the stars on the team since they lost a few of the stars to pro league. So just next man up kind of thing. And then you mentioned a goalie. Losing Trey Muse is obviously losing that kind of caliber goalie that it's hard to find a caliber goalie of Trey Muse. So just even replacing most of that kind of stuff since Indiana likes to really be a defensive team.
Yeah.
What about the IU women's basketball team? This might be the program that has the least lit items on their wish list for the offseason as a good thing.
Yeah. There's not many things as far as women's basketball is concerned. I think a summer of development for the likes of Ali Patberg and Jalen Penn will do wonders for them, and Brenna Wise as well. But just getting their 5-star freshman in that plays center and getting her accustomed to playing in Big Ten women's basketball really fast, because we're definitely going to need somebody who can play center. Like, you look at all the teams that made it to the Final Four, all of them had a center that was like 6'4", 6'5", with long arms and was able to defend and move really well. Like, that's super overpowered when it comes to women's basketball. Our recruit, she's 6'3", but like, just getting some really reliable center play will help the likes of Ali Patberg and Jalen Penn, shoot better.
Yeah. For me, this is not much of an off-season thing, and it's kind of, I guess, maybe a mentality going into the season, just to have a better conference play, the record, and just play in general, because they were a great team this year. They just struggled in some conference games that they frankly should have won, and they would have been a higher seed. So just some better conference play overall. They still played pretty well, but they lost to some teams that they shouldn't have. All right, football off-season wish list. One thing for football.
A quarterback that can actually throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field. Not adding Peyton Ramsey at all, but if he could develop a long bomb, or at least a threat of throwing it deep, it will definitely open up the offense more.
You took most of what I was going to say. I'd add on to that / change slightly, just to find the right QB out of all 3 QBs that we have. Whether it is Peyton Ramsey that's really developing in his own. If he really does it, because his leadership ability is incredible. If he really does able to fix that one throw the ball down the field type of thing, if that's him, then honestly, I'm okay with that. But to find that right person.
I expect our defense to be fantastic this year, by the way. I've been hearing great things out of the football camp as far as defense goes. Offense, on the other hand, I think our receiving core will be great. I think our offensive line is probably going to take a hit from the people we lost. But, yeah, just figuring out the QB situation really fixes almost everything on offense. So.
And the spring game, the Cream and Crimson game this week, you are not going to see that QB play. A lot of people are going to be out for this spring game due to various reasons that we don't need to get into. But next week, the plan is potentially to have a guest on, one of the Indiana HQ football junkies, who really does an incredible job. If you haven't seen his football stuff, go check out Blake's stuff on Indiana HQ stuff. Yeah, we might have him on next week, since he's going to go to the game and just get some of the thoughts, since this football team is honestly new offensive coordinator. I think this offseason for the football is really generating some buzz and some excitement. And I think for one of the first times, or at least continuing the first time in a while, there's some excitement for this football team, which is not something you usually see in or around Bloomington. But let's wrap up this episode with so this week, instead of asking what your questions were for the week, we asked you a question. So if you follow us on Twitter or Facebook, we asked what your thoughts were about Bob Knight coming back to Indiana for the first time since he left in 2000, and we wanted to share some of your thoughts live on air. But first, Matt, what was your opinion as you heard the news and tried to rush over to Bart Kaufman Field to see the spectacle of Bob Knight arriving at an Indiana baseball game for the first time since 2000 this past Saturday?
I was so absolutely confused. I woke up at like 1 because I'm a college kid and that's what I do. I woke up and I looked at my phone and I went, and then I, blinked my eyes about 1,000,000 times and then looked at it again and went, oh my God. And then I texted my wonderful girlfriend, Anna, and was like, we have to go. We got to be there. So we rushed on down. I have mixed feelings, and mixed feelings doesn't even represent like half of what I feel about it. I think it's great for the school that he's back, and I do think if he actually feels like he's going to be forgiveful to the university and he understands what he did and he understands what he did wrong, then I think it's great that he's back. But if he's going to still deny the fact that what he did was wrong. If he's still going to act, you know, in a very defensive way when it comes to his actions that he had, then I don't want him within 5 feet of the program. So it just really depends on his thoughts on it. Of course, he has expressed his regret in interviews in the past about how he handled things, but he has to really believe it, you know. So, like, if he sincerely means to come back and he wants to be back, then I hope he comes back, and I hope he can continue to be healthy, or at least somewhat healthy.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of weird news to take. When we asked this question, we got a lot of responses, and the majority were positive responses. That it's like, hey, it's great for him to be back, that kind of stuff. There were some, I guess, in a word, bitter responses. As some people are entitled to. It's just been such a weird situation throughout the entire thing. I think you should expect anything from happy responses to anything in the middle to some negative responses, which is okay. But personally, I thought it was a good thing that he was able to come back. And first, when people talk about the circumstance of him coming back and why baseball game and all this stuff, man, he loves baseball. That was something that he really liked. And when asked what brought him, I forget specifically what the wording was, but basically it's just like, how you doing, coach? Why are you here, basically? And he was just like, it's going to be a lovely afternoon. It's good to be here. So it seems like maybe he just wanted to go back, watch baseball game. It was a really nice afternoon, weather-wise and everything. Baseball team has a new coach, a coach that really admires Bob Knight and everything when he grew up with. So I thought it was a good thing. Like you said, I would agree that hopefully just maybe some more future things, whether he's either quiet or just doesn't say anything. Hopefully some of the future responses are more on the positive side and just everyone can get pushed back. But we promised that we'd share some of your thoughts. So most of the thoughts came through Twitter. We had a few Facebook ones. But Matt, what were some comments that specifically jumped out to you when scrolling through the responses for our question?
Sure. So the first response that really stood out to me was from Sally Baker McCarty on Twitter. She said, I was a long-time supporter of Knight until, after many warnings, he couldn't control himself and blew it. Not showing up to the honor of his 76 team was the last straw. He had his chance to make things right and blew it for the second time. And now a baseball game? I wish he stay away. I think I also feel that kind of sentiment. I kind of feel that sentiment. I just feel like he should have come back for the 76 team, and I feel really bad that it's taken this long for him to kind of feel forgiveful, and it's tragic almost. So yeah, I mean I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, and I think that, and that was one of the more not negative comments, but I guess not one of the more positive comments, which is okay. And I think the biggest point on there was that not coming back for the 76 team. I think that's going to be the thing that really comes in and sticks for some people, how he couldn't come back for the 76 when they honored the 76 team, but then he came back for a baseball game, which again, like I said, it's great to come back for a baseball game. Personally, I think that's the best he could have done, because it would have been hard for him, his first appearance, to be back at a full or half full assembly hall. That would have been just very different. So I think it's kind of just get your toes wet kind of stuff. And again, he liked baseball. So I think him coming in, he didn't talk to anyone. From what we know, he only kind of really mentioned something to one media member. He wasn't asked questions, which is okay. And I think that was just, hey, I'm here. I said I wasn't going to come back to Indiana, but I'm here. Maybe for whatever reasons, even if his health is worse than it seems, maybe he wants to really make amends. And honestly, I'm a type of person that I think it's okay to forgive someone. And if he really wants to make amends and try and come back to this program, some place that's really obviously cemented his entire life and his entire career, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were, I at least agreed with some of the stuff I just said. And I think this is also a good statement that kind of wraps up maybe a lot of people's feelings, which maybe not the first part, but Darian on Twitter says, I don't care for the guy, but it's such a cool story. A man in twilight of his life finally forgiving old grudges. And some people might not care for him, but he also recognized, hey, that's still pretty cool, at least that starting to be at the end of his life, starting to come and forgive old grudges. Some other ones, strap hangers on Twitter. I feel it is a wonderful thing! Exclamation mark. Wish he would have did it earlier, but he finally came home. Jesse, glad to see it happen. Wasn't a pretty divorce, but everyone that was at IU when it happened is gone, and it's time for the two to be reunited.
Yeah,
continue.
Yeah, just to say, like, I there was rumors that he's trying to move back to Bloomington. I think having him in and around the community would be nice, and I feel like it'd be interesting, like, for a student to, like, run into him at, like, Kroger, like it's those kind of things that, like, that's what Purdue has, is like Gene Katie. Like, I feel like IU should have the same thing with Bob Knight. And just, having him in and around the program. And that's not saying he's going to be like, some people are becoming around saying he's becoming an assistant head coach. No, he's not becoming an assistant head coach. But, like, if he wants to come in and sit in on practices, he should be able to do that, right? Like, as a legendary head coach. And if Archie wants to pick his brain about something, he should be able to come in and, Archie should be able to pick his brain about something. He should be a resource for the program. He shouldn't be, what he has been, which is a kind of, like an omen, just kind of like above the program. Like, he's here and he's a part of it, but he's not actually a part of it. And it's this very strange give and take with him. So I definitely want him as a facet within the program.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And like someone like Gian on Twitter said, I'm so happy that he stepped foot back on campus. Never thought it would happen. Love Bobby with some heart eyes, which, I agree.
I never thought it would happen.
And it did, which is great.
Yeah.
What was another one that I had? Blue River Dude, Twitter, long overdue, didn't think it would happen, but I'm glad it did. It's never too late to make amends until it's too late. Live and let live. So another great comment, trumpet time. I was tearing up watching him on that golf cart. The crying face emoji, but that's how I feel about it. So I think he meant it tearing up in a good way. Then Scott just posted a gif of meh. Yeah. Honestly, I can see that side too, but I had one comment that I wanted to wrap up with just last thoughts, or something like Tyler saying, the curse is broken. Archie is the guy. Any last comments?
Yeah, well, if there was a curse, I feel like it's like half broken now. I feel like in order to break the curse, he's got to come back to a basketball game, or at least tour Assembly Hall. I don't know. It's a tough subject. If he starts to show himself around more and show up more to things, and at least talks to Fred Glass about stuff, and maybe even talks to Archie, like, I'll feel a lot better about it. But as of now, I'm kind of in the boat that was like, it's cool that I got to see him at a baseball game, but at the same time, like, I feel like he just needs to be in a better place with the whole IU basketball community as a whole. And I think he's just trying to, like, put his, toes in the water just to see, how the reception would be if he comes back.
Mm-hmm. And this last comment that came from Sally on Facebook, it's slightly long, but I think this is the best way that I've seen almost anyone put it. And I really wanted to share this with everyone. And I hope people listening to the end, even if you don't like it, I think you could listen to this and just take that with you as you go through the rest of this episode and into wherever your day is. Sally on Facebook, I grew up watching as much IU basketball as possible. I loved all of it, even got tossed from his gym once after sneaking in. I hated the way things ended. It seemed to me that Coach had some significant issues dealing with losing and made some very poor choices. I hated, all caps, hated how that ended. I don't have an answer on what would have worked better. I just wish it had. Either way, I have been hurt and upset with Coach's attitude about wishing people dead and not ever wanting to come back, but I got flat out pissed when he wouldn't put his anger aside to stand with the 76 team when they were honored at Assembly Hall. All that being said, I was in tears when I saw him coming back on Sunday. His absence is a gaping hole at Assembly Hall. Perhaps realizing he isn't going to live forever, he has chosen to move past his hatred. I certainly hope so, and I pray his health holds out to see if he makes an appearance next season. I know Archie, the players, and the fans, for the most part, would welcome him with open arms. In the end, I would love to see his name on that floor. And I think it summarizes the roller coaster of emotions the majority of Indiana basketball fans have had since his time all the way up to present day after him coming back in 2019 for the first time in 19, almost 20 years. So that about wraps it up for our 83rd show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. We will be back next Monday for another edition of the Hoosier Sound Off. Big thanks to our live audience for coming out as always and participating in the chat. Make sure to stay tuned through updates on Twitter. Visit our website, indianahq.com, and subscribe so you can get all of those episodes right to your phone. Send us your questions to the audience so we can get them on our next episode, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook so we can feature your responses if we have a question for you. Most importantly, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review on iTunes or Facebook. Tell a friend, share our links. Your support is how we grow this podcast so we can reach all of the passionate IU fans such as yourself. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.